In 1983, the Peace of Amiens broke down, forcing the British on a heightened defense. By 1804, Spain allied with France, which provided enough ships to challenge Britain. In 1805, Vice Admiral Villeneuve, commander of the French-Spanish fleets, left Toulon, where they were bottled up, and went to the Atlantic Sea. The British under Nelson chased French-Spanish fleets to Cadiz. The British under Nelson planned their strategy of attack. October 19th, Villeneuve decided to hit the seas as he had 33 to 27 British vessels. Nelson's ship formed two columns to attack the concave Spanish-French fleet. The British ultimately won due to the British quick speed and flexibility. During the battle was struck by a bullet. It went through his lung and lodged in his spine. He died half an hour later. The battle was the last major naval battle fought by Napoleon. It sent the message that the British were the kings of the sea and secured their power and trading success.
The continental system was designed by Napoleon in 1906 to stop British trade and make his empire more self-sufficient. His plan was to make Britain's economy undergo a severe depression and secure his empire. On November 21, 1806, Germany announced a blockade against the British, which was copied by Italy on December 17, 1807. This blockade stated that French allies and neutrals were not allowed to trade with the British or buy their goods. This denied France the opportunity of cheap yet high-quality products, which led to famine, unemployment, inflation, starvation in France, and decline in international trade. To keep his continental system afloat, Napoleon imposed heavy taxes to raise revenue, but this tax increase was met with much opposition from the French. In response to Napoleon's continental system, Britain responded with its own blockade, which was more successful because they had a stronger navy. Napoleon's continental system only weakened French economies and the economies of their allies, rather than damage Britain. France's unstable economies and heavy taxes undermined Napoleon's early achievements, which resulted in his downfall.
In 1810, Russia withdrew from the continental system. In retaliation, Napoleon led a massive army into Russia in the summer of 1812. This invasion of Russia was called the Moscow Campaign. Napoleon's army consisted of more than 600,000 soldiers, one of the largest single deployments in military history. To defeat Napoleon's army, Russia adopted the strategy of constant retreat whenever Napoleon's army attempted to attack. Napoleon's overconfidence led him to believe that he was winning the Moscow Campaign. Instead, Russia was leading Napoleon's army further and further into Russia so that his army would be trapped in the heart of Russia when winter came. On September 15, 1812, Napoleon arrived in Moscow to find that the city was deserted. He and his army quickly settled into the comforts of Moscow. Upon fleeing Moscow, Russian General Mikhail Kutuzov and his army set fire to the city, blocking Napoleon's army from getting reinforcements and supplies. Convinced that Russia would ask for peace and perhaps re-enter the continental system, Napoleon had his army stay in Moscow for the next month. However, by mid-October, it was clear that Napoleon was wrong. On October 19, 1812, Napoleon began his retreat from Russia. The retreat was long, costly, and humiliating. Not only was Napoleon's army slowed down by the harsh Russian winter, the Russian army suddenly turned to an aggressive and merciless offensive strategy. The Russian army, which was adapted to their country's weather, chased Napoleon's army across Russia for the next 2 months. On December 14, 1812, Napoleon's army finally got out of Russia. This retreat is considered the turning point in Napoleon's military and political career in France. It has gone down in history as one of the greatest logistical disasters of all time. Out of the 600,000 French troops who entered Russia, no more than 20,000 made it out. Napoleon's defeat showed European countries that Napoleon was not untouchable and could be defeated. Thus, more countries became confident to attack Napoleon's so-called undefeatable, powerful army. Countries such as Russia, Austria, Prussia, Sweden, Great Britain, Spain, Portugal, and certain smaller German states formed the Sixth Coalition, whose united armies were vital to Napoleon's defeat at the Battle of Leipzig and his subsequent abdication.
One of Napoleon's greatest opposers would be Francis I of Austria, or Francis II. a leader who would help defeat Napoleon at the Battle of Leipzig in 1813 and consequently be one of the main factors in Napoleon's downfall. A strong absolutist, Francis hated France for deciding on a constitution in 1792 and naturally hated Napoleon for leading the country in 1803. Francis's dislike of Napoleon would be strengthened by the numerous defeats Austria and Francis would suffer at the hands of the Napoleonic Wars. Starting in 1806, when Francis abolished the Holy Roman Empire after a defeat by the French, and when Francis, due to financial reasons and despite his hatred, saw the marriage of his 18-year-old daughter Marie-Louise and Napoleon, 22 years her senior, in 1810. However, the marriage was no alliance between Austria and France. In 1813, the Battle of Leipzig saw the convergence of Napoleon's troops against the armies of the Allied countries of Austria, Prussia, Russia, and the support from the Confederation of Rhine, which was a group of German countries. The battle took place only a short time after Napoleon's troops withdrew from Russia and were stationed at the Elbe River. However, with the Allied countries coming to attack and communication through the city of Leipzig being threatened, Napoleon stayed to protect the city. While the battle began, it soon became apparent Napoleon's troops could not handle the numbers of the Allied countries, and while retreating, the French army suffered a major blow when a bridge blew up with many soldiers running across it. The Allied countries' victory forced Napoleon to return to France, and with the momentum gained from the victory at the Battle of Leipzig, the Allied countries would be able to invade France the next year in 1814, and Napoleon would be banished back to Elba.
April 14th, Napoleon escaped his exile in Elba and returned to France, winning the hearts of the French. This action led to the other European countries, Austria, Britain, Prussia, and Russia, to unite to defeat Napoleon. On June 1815, Napoleon marched his troops into Belgium. Napoleon divided his army so that one could pursue the Prussians and British located at Waterloo separately as he tried to defeat the chance of them joining forces. The troops under Blücher, the Prussian commander, were not defeated but retreated. Wellington, the commander of the British troops, held off the French troops, and the finale was put on hold for the next morning. The big air of Napoleon was to wait to attack later in the morning, as he waited to have the ground harden, making it easier for his troops to attack. Though this allowed time for the Prussians to hike up and meet the British at Waterloo. Napoleon attacked the far left garrison, and the British ultimately defeated them. He then tried to attack up the center line. The Prussians arrived on the eastern front, forcing the French to flee and split resources and men on both sides. The battlefield was boxed in as both forces pushed the French back. Napoleon led a charge up to the ridge but was overpowered and forced to flee. British and Prussians won. This was the last major battle of Napoleon, ending an era of French dominance. It wouldn't be for another 30 years that the Europeans would go to war, and until World War I, where a great battle was fought on European soil.